But when I first heard it, I thought, what is going on?
Hello, David.
Hi, Matt.
That time again, isn't it?
It is. It's that time.
Spotify. So what I was going to ask you about, so basically we've done one where the band, me and Kev sort of talked about trying to give some sort of positives about Spotify, where, you know, it's for just as a discovery tool, and for the punter, it's quite useful, isn't it?
Yes.
And Robin we did one with Robin from Cosmograph, where he said sort of similar things about as a discovery tool. What do you think Spotify is like for a small, successful label like Bad Elephant Music?
Successful, thank you. I mean, it's an interesting one. We've always done it. So right from the start, we have been a label who have used digital services to promote our music. So in a sense, we've never known anything different. We've never been in a position like, you know, some of the more long-standing labels have been, where before streaming and downloads were a thing, they were raking it in, basically. And then before streaming kicked in, and you and I have spoken about this on a number of occasions, you could do not bad just by doing downloads through Bandcamp or even through iTunes and Amazon MP3 and so forth. But we've always done the streaming thing, so it was something that we just accepted was going to be part of our reality right from the start. Having said that, if you were to sort of scratch away the surface, I couldn't say wholeheartedly that it was a wonderful thing from a record label's perspective, because I'm sure it does dilute sales to some extent. I mean, I see different perspectives on this. I know that Robin, for example, and Greg from Big Big Train, they both seem convinced that it actually is a boost to sales. But perhaps they're operating in a slightly different environment to the one that we inhabit. As a discovery tool, you know, you've discovered that it's been good for that.
It's definitely been good. Definitely a lot of people have found us through Spotify and Spotify playlists. I mean, from, you know, I was one of the people who 11 years ago, we did quite well out of Bandcamp and downloading and things like that. That was great.
Yes.
That's gone. When Spotify came along, downloads, I mean, were drastically reduced, weren't they?
They were. I mean, we've noticed that even just in the time that we've been going since 2013. But you know, it's a weird old thing. It's a weird old world. I think no one discovers the label through Spotify, but then why would they be bothered about the label, particularly considering we have such an eclectic bunch of artists? And I think a lot of the bands who we have working with us are acts who traditionally will do well on CD, for example, anyway, or they'll do reasonably well on CD because they've got that type of audience. They've got a bunch of people who'll buy the CD or buy a download. In fact, we still do, you know, more downloads than you might expect on certain albums.
I mean, do you think people don't buy downloads as an act of sort of patronage to sort of support the label and the artist?
I think maybe to support the artist. And the other thing which actually we've noticed is we're seeing an uptick in downloads this year because a lot of overseas customers don't want to pay the ridiculous duties that are being levied now in Europe.
Nonsense, yeah.
We've still got some European sales. But you know, they're buying the download rather than not buying anything at all.
That's good, isn't it?
Which is nice, and that's quite reassuring. I mean, Spotify. Spotify. It's something we do. Do I sometimes wish it had never existed? Yes, I sometimes wish it never existed. But it's there now, so you've got to make the best of it.
The thing that winds me up is the sort of gamification of it. In that, like, I was talking to a promoter the other day. He does a big metal festival, and he said he wouldn't book anyone who's got less than 10,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. And I was like, well, you know, how do I fix that? Because, you know, really, you can get 10,000 monthly listeners on Spotify by just getting on one Spotify playlist. You know what I mean? It's not really the indication of success, because what success is to have a core audience. So there's people who've got, you know, they have 10,000, you know, they have 100,000 listeners on Spotify, but they can't sell out a small venue in London.
Yeah.
So it's a different...
Or you could pay some bloke in Serbia who's got his little farm of listeners all automated to do the 10,000 plays of your album.
Yeah, which is utterly pointless, because what you actually want is real punters. Who'll be, you know, in your Facebook group and telling their friends, and that's what you want. It's it's a question of funneling people down into the core audience. And I think sometimes, I think Spotify is useful for discovery, but the people you really want, and the people I'm interested in, is the people who buy vinyl, people who buy CD, people who come to shows, because But there's people I know like in bands, and they got 20,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, and they're all in Brazil, and they're all in India, and they're never going to be able to tour there. They're never going to be able to sell physical to them.
And that's assuming they're real listeners anyway.
This is it. It's very hard to. It's very, as far as I understand, it's reasonably easy to game Spotify. I've not tried it, but I mean, there's certainly playlists, promotion companies who will put you on playlists, and there's things like there's people on Fiverr who will say guarantee 100,000 plays or something. But I just think, what's the point of doing that? Because they're not actual real fans, are they?
No, they're not. It doesn't really sort of say anything about the band. The only reason you do that, I suppose, is if you were in that position where something that you wanted to do was contingent upon you having that sort of thing. But I would say, I mean, you mentioned that the promoter you're talking to who wouldn't consider booking a band unless they had 10,000 listens. Yeah, I think that's just. It's a bit lazy. It's a bit lazy.
The other thing is, one of the problems BM would have with this, is that the bands that do best on Spotify are ones that sound like another band but 5% different. So if you're like, you sound just like Tame Impala but 5% different, or Porcupine Tree but 5%, or Genesis are 5%, or whoever, you know what I mean, or any of these bands. If you sound similar to another band, the algorithm, they analyse the waveform, and they analyse the people who listen to it, and they scrape data, and they'll recommend, the other band to that thing.
Yeah.
One of the problems with Bad Elephant is you don't tend to find bands that sound like other bands, do you?
We don't. A lot.
Bonkers policy of signing original sounding bands.
Well, that's it, and that, to be honest, is
sound like each other.
We've talked about this before. This is the heart.
You're doing it wrong.
This is the heart of what the Elephant is about. Is that it wouldn't be interesting if I was just signing, another Porcupine Tree clone. I could get them. I get
offered them all the time. I'm sure.
I get offered them all the time, but. I prefer to sort of do stuff that's interesting. I prefer to do, the Fierce and the Deads, and the Shinebacks and the Tom Slatters, and and Billy Bottle and the Multiple, which is our next one that's out next week.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like, and Carves's solo stuff doesn't do very well on there, but Gong do really well, because Gong, people know the Gong brand. So it's like
the name, isn't it?
Yeah. But there's I was talking to Carves about Spotify the other day. He was like, he hasn't got the numbers on there either, really. But he's certainly Carves has got a phenomenal cult following, hasn't
he? He has.
He does well on Bandcamp, and he sells well on there, and people love his music, and he sells at shows, and he's got a fan base, isn't he? So it's not necessarily a reflection of the reality of the situation, is it?
No, I don't think so.
Like I say, for Bad Elephant, the model for one of the ways to be successful as a label is to sign loads of bands that sound the same, build up an email list or a Facebook page, and then just flog the same derivative rubbish over and over again.
And then die of boredom.
Die of boredom, yeah. And then I think eventually the audience will get bored of it as well. But that's not the way you guys have done it, is it? So I mean,
No. I mean, we do it with a bit of a heavy heart, I suppose, in that it's not. Well, put it like this: you don't look at it as a revenue generator, certainly.
No, certainly. I mean, my feeling is that there's people who would buy from Bandcamp, there's people who buy from who listen on Spotify, there's people who buy vinyl, people who buy CD, people listen to weird internet radio stations, people who listen to, and I think you just got to be everywhere to suck everybody in.
That's the approach we take.
It's my philosophy, I mean, and one of the things, if you're not on Spotify, people say, "Oh, sod it, I'll just torrent it anyway." So it's not. I don't think it's the really. There's a. Yeah, I was. Someone who's only putting like 2 tracks off an album on Spotify. And so there's 2 things about that. Younger people listen to music on Spotify and YouTube. That's a fact, isn't it?
Yeah.
Would you say? How does Hugh listen to music?
He cadges off my Spotify account.
But that's the same here. So my son, and he's never experienced music attached to a physical product apart from piles of CDs up here. But
yeah,
we don't tend to. The time I spent looking for a CD, I can put it on Spotify on the speakers, and we already listen to. You know what I mean?
So, I mean, as a punter, I mean, I do still buy CDs.
Yeah.
But then I don't often listen to the CDs. I will, if I've bought them through Bandcamp, sometimes I don't even have to do more than just have a flick through them, and the CD never needs to hit my well, I'd be ripping it onto my computer to play on the phone on the way to work, or on my little Bluetooth speaker downstairs.
Yeah. So this is how we've all got these methods of. What if I've just discovered a band, I'll Spotify or YouTube them. And then if I'm a big fan, I might buy a T-shirt and a CD, or I might go to Bandcamp and download the album because I want to support them.
Yeah.
But if I buy an album on Bandcamp, it's not generally, it's not the reason I'm generally buying it. It's because I want to support the band and support the team behind the record, etc. You know what I mean?
The other thing I use Spotify for is as a kind of sort of jukebox of stuff that I've had years ago on vinyl, for example, or whatever. So, for some bizarre reason earlier, I thought, I wouldn't mind listening to some Peter Gabriel, and
that's all on there. I've had listened to the Peter.
Yeah, and I thought, okay, so I've got the CDs up there. I've even got the vinyl from when I first bought it. But I listened to it on Spotify because it was easy.
Yeah, I mean, I think I find myself like, if I hear of a new band, I will try. Yeah, it's generally Spotify. I'll probably try first. So at the moment, I'm listening to all the King Gizzard stuff, and I really like that. And that's kind of that, because obviously they've got a massive catalogue. It's quite, I think they've got 17 albums out or something. And so just to find the good, the stuff that you like, it's quite eclectic as well.
Yes.
I remember when I was a kid buying Zappa albums, and you had to, and they're so different. I'm not saying any were rubbish, but some of them are less my cup of tea. And I remember trying to buy Zappa albums, you know what I mean? You'd buy some brilliant, some of them be,
and now you can listen to them.
Yeah, you can, for discovery, it's good. But the only thing I would say, do you remember in the old days, you buy an album or a CD, this makes it sound like very old men, but when you used to buy an album on CD or a vinyl, you listen to it once, and perhaps you weren't that into it, right? You bought it because you heard a track or you read a review, but you'd listen to it a few times to give it a go because you paid for it.
Yep.
And I don't think anybody does that anymore.
No, you don't feel that sort of sense of value in it.
Yeah.
because there's no ownership. And as you say, you haven't forked out your money for it.
There's things like some, because there's some bands like I say, for example, Carvus stuff, or like Cardiacs and stuff. Some people, I would imagine, they'd hear it the first time, and oh, what the hell's this?
Oh God,
the more you sort of the more you listen to it, the more it sort of starts to make sense.
Well, anyone who says to me that the first time they heard Lark's Tongues in Aspic, that they were utterly convinced this was some of the best music ever, then they're lying, quite frankly, because
it's very much stuff that you have to
takes a while to get into.
But once it clicks, it is some of the most wonderful stuff you've ever heard.
One of my top 10 albums of all time, and we talked about this before on the King Crimson video. But when I first heard it, I thought, what is going on?
Yeah. No, I agree completely. It's definitely a one of those ones where I think if you spend time with records, like I remember I first heard Shostakovich and the Mahavishnu Orchestra stuff and lots of stuff that I really like now. But the first time I heard it, I was just like, I don't get this at all. Mahavishnu,
it's a mess. Yeah,
it's just like I don't understand it. But the more and I think possibly we don't do that. And the other thing about Spotify is you tend to rather listen to an album. Sometimes you might listen to the Spotify introductory playlists or one track, and it sort of dismantles. I still like making albums. That's very old fashioned, but I still like the thing of making an album and making it so that one track flows into the next, and there's a juxtaposition of key, and like one big composition and stuff. So I don't know. So in the future, do you think that you continue to put music on Spotify and continue to use that to be your plan?
I think so. I think we just have to continue with what you said earlier, that you just use every medium at your disposal to try and get the music out there. For a label like Bad Elephant, which isn't ultimately about making money, it's about getting interesting music out there.
Yeah, making interesting stuff happen, isn't it?
Then you can do that. I think if you were, it's interesting actually. Earlier on today, I was listening to a podcast. It's a tech podcast called Darknet Diaries, and the guy was talking about Pirate Bay. He was talking to one of the three Swedish guys who ran Pirate Bay, and who ended up being put in prison for it because they were sued by the American. Yeah, they were sued by the American movie industry effectively, but they were having this discussion about ownership of art in a more sort of general context, and this Swedish guy was very much along the sort of the left-wing libertarian type of arm, where he was saying that that there shouldn't be such a thing as ownership of music or of films, and that if it's good, artists will do fine regardless of whether or not they can actually sell it. So he was, although Pirate Bay weren't storing that stuff, they were just providing torrent links. It was a search engine effectively, and it still is. It's still going.
It's still there.
Remarkably, it's still there. And then they've had to change their domain several times, but and their hosting provider.
But whack-a-mole, isn't it, these people?
Yeah, exactly. He was talking about that, and the host, who's normally a bloke called Jack Resider, really good podcaster, and in fact, he's the one podcast that I actually slip some money via Patreon for, because his podcast is really excellent, mostly about hacking, and it's mostly sort of stuff that I take an interest in for my day job. But he was essentially agreeing with this guy, and I thought, well, you're not seeing the other side of this, which is that if you are an artist who is relying on music to make a living, an independent artist, then Spotify and the sort of the devaluation of music is a real challenge for you, and it's something you've got to sort of work hard to get around.
I think it's difficult because there's so many potential business models for a band. So if you've got high spot, you only sit there on Spotify, but you tour a lot and you can do really well off that. I mean, that's great. I mean, that model works. There's people who do piano music that costs nothing to make. So they just basically record on a laptop, and then they record it, goes out on a Spotify lo-fi hip hop playlist, and they might get 100,000 listens a month and cost nothing to make, and they do all right off that. So that's another model that works. But for a rock band that needs to record in a studio, that
it costs you something.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you're recording drums and stuff, I mean, you can do a lot of it at home, but drums, and there's certain things you have to record. That if you make
it is drummers, isn't it? It's always drummers.
It's always the drummers that cause the problem. Always the drummers. But so if that's not that, it can't be done for nothing. And the other element on the other side of it is obviously there's production costs. Because obviously if you are going to do vinyl and the CD, and also there's the PR and marketing and the endless, and also it's just the time. You put a lot of time. It's not the time you recording and playing the music, because that's the fun bit, and that's the bit you do for nothing. But it's the constant, trying to promote things on Facebook and and making videos and doing stuff, because it's basically in the current climate. I feel that if you don't continually, just put something out there, that's people just forget you, because there's just so many bands. I mean, there's just so many bands.
Goldfish brains, basically.
But like I say, so many artists value themselves only on how many streams they get a month. And the artist app, the Spotify artist app. I mean, I check every couple of days, see how many streams you've had. They said, I don't think it's good for you mental health wise. No. I don't think that's a cool thing. I don't think that's a.
It's like reading reviews almost. It's and it has about as much meaning in a sense. All you get with the review. I mean, it's nice to have good reviews. But all you get from reviews is what one person thinks of it. It's not symptomatic of.
How much do you think reviews affect sales?
Well, they don't.
I think the best thing for reviews is when a band gets a really good review, and it sort of reassures the fan base that the band they're following isn't rubbish.
Yeah.
A friend of mine runs a very, very popular sort of website, music website. It's one of the top end sort of music websites, and he says the best time for traffic is when they get a band's sharing the reviews that so it's not really and it's not massively in interest to do negative reviews, because no one shares negative reviews anyway, so
exactly,
it's hilarious. But so criticism is different now. But sorry, back to Spotify. So you'll continue to. So what is the next Bad Elephant album? Well, next few releases, really. So give yourself some promote some Bad Elephant.
Okay, so we've got the Billy Bot. So we're recording this on May the 11th.
Yeah, I'm not sure when it'll go. It depends when Kev gets time to edit it.
So recording it sort of early May. Or May the 14th, we've got Billy Bottle and the Multiples' new album, The Other Place. We're into that. How would you describe that? Well, I don't know, but I really like it. It's Billy is a very experienced artist and writer. She lives in Devon, and she records with local musicians who are the Multiple. And there's all sorts of stuff going on there. There's a concept album about the 2016 general elections. So make of that what you will. That's coming out. Then in June, we've got one which I'm really looking forward to, which is the new one from Big Hog, which really is them kind of. I mean, Justin from the band says they felt that they needed to up their game, and this new record is really fantastic.
I like their last one. It's really cool.
I mean that one is going to be a vinyl release as well, because they always do the vinyl. So we have a slightly different discussion with them on that one, but they always do quite well with vinyl up in Glasgow. And then July we've got Mr. Tom Slatter with his 7th album, which I've just heard. Actually, he's just sent me the mixes for that one. So that's going to be great. And that one it's his proggiest one for a while. It has a 20-minute song on it.
Is that a threat?
Yes. From Tom, you know it is.
Oh, he's very talented. He's a lovely
and then hopefully later, well, we've got Frattle Mirror, their new album's out later this year. We are hoping to have one from Tribe of Names, which is Simon Godfrey's band. Used to be Valdez.
Yeah, I like that.
And then possibly we might squeak a gift album in as well if that's ready.
Cool.
But that's going to depend upon a number of variables. And that's it for the year, really.
Brilliant. Well, support Bad Elephant. They're always worth supporting. And we'll do some more stuff soon with David on the YouTube channel. All right. Thanks, mate. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Matt. Take care.